And then once, there we go. Once Zoom says webinar being streamed, and once the web browser here says we're good, then that's all it takes. And then once, and there we go. There we are. Once Zoom. Oh, except that I forgot to share in that strange way that I do for the benefit of the YouTube stream, so everybody can see everybody else. There we go. As webinar being streamed, and once the web browser. Okay.
All right. Okay. I think. Oh, sorry. I get to bed at 1 o'clock. Had a late select board meeting. And then again until 11 o'clock.
No problem at all.
12:30. I was just so wired from it, in a good way.
Yep. Anyone interested in a public comment or two under that heading? I don't see anyone watching on YouTube, and the only person in the attendee status is Craig because he's on the phone. So unless one of the five of us wants to make any kind of a public comment, we can go right on to subcommittee reports.
I could check our Twitter page and see if we've got anything.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's a great idea. As a matter of fact, we should remember to get a Twitter update from you, Jacob, every month. That's an important part of it. I know we've mentioned in the past occasionally when there is something notable on Twitter, but we should go out of our way to include that in the agenda as part of public comment.
Mostly it's just the same couple of people.
Yeah.
Nothing
Well,
really.
Constructive criticism or
Kind of,
griping,
yeah.
or?
Some of them are a lot. I'd say there's a pretty fine line between constructive criticism and griping, but
And what? Between constructive criticism and what? I just didn't hear you well.
griping.
Griping. All right. Well,
It seems like there's well, one person is tagging us in a lot of posts about the South Station escalators and how they have failed to work for several months.
How many?
And
Several? All of them?
both of them
yeah.
for a little bit of time between the station lobby and the
Yeah.
mezzanine and the station and the subway station.
We've talked about this topic before. It's a massive problem. Just we think about the rolling stock. You think about other things of the TV. You don't tend to think of, you think about tracks, but you don't think of the infrastructure of the stations. In particular, there's a very high number of alerts across elevators and escalators, and there have been for another number of months. Now, what's hard to suss out and what's hard to figure out is how much of that is neglect on the T's part versus how much is supply chain issues lingering from COVID and having trouble getting contractors because it's not the T who generally does that work, it's other folks. These things, it's amazing how long it takes to repair an escalator. As I think I'd mentioned before, at Broadway, the Broadway escalator was out forever and ever. And positive update there. Finally, after over 6 months of being out, it's now back online as of maybe a month ago. So they are on lists, and I know the T tracks all this. It's just really hard. I feel like we've had a challenge from our perspective of trying to suss out how much of the slowness is on the T versus how much of the slow is on factors outside their control.
Well, I mean, I think it's primarily the latter, because they are aware of it, and I'm pretty sure they have the funding for it, the money allocated in the budget for it. So I don't think it's a matter of going over budget and then they're not working on it, because they don't have the money. I think it really is, supply chain. And then, I was going to say then some unexpected complexities, but that usually doesn't come with repair of escalators. It sometimes comes with installation of new elevators.
Yeah, it's also been a problem in the modern history of the T, and it especially came to the fore with some of the accessibility laws and regulations. And that's why, as far as I know, Judge King still has hearings, accessibility hearings. He's the guy overseeing it from a bigger picture. And Boston separately has an accessibility commission, and they also have periodic hearings. It's pretty serious when, not for people who are, not so much for people who are able-bodied, obviously, but it can be pretty serious for other people, especially if they get caught like end of the day during the shutdown overnight, and they're stuck, which happens occasionally.
Oh, it's an issue for everybody, but for two reasons. Like anyone can become less than able-bodied at any given point in time. So being a broken leg, or a
Yep.
severely sprained ankle has you needing an escalator or an elevator really fast. But you're a parent, pushing a kid in a stroller, you need it. And certainly people like going to airports with lots of luggage needs it. So
Yep.
They
Yep.
benefit everybody.
But also blind people who rely on their dogs.
Yeah.
It's very hard for the dogs to adjust on the fly when they already know the patterns.
Right.
Craig, you can't see it because you're on the phone, but I pulled up the alerts page for elevators and escalators. It's one page combined, and there's 17 active alerts. Actually, that's 18. I'm highlighting the word ongoing, which is a count of 15, and then there's another 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. I wonder if you could get a sense of, I don't know how many escalators there are in the system. You can probably find that stuff on, and then maybe some kind of indication of what is the percentage of escalators that aren't working over time. And do the same thing for elevators to just kind of see if there's any kind of pattern.
Yeah.
Another thing you could compare with is downtown buildings. They have a hell of a lot of escalators, but people are generally not trapped. They're more often trapped in elevators, but even so, well, I guess elevator, I've been trapped in an elevator as well, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I just don't know to what extent. Yeah, I know what you mean. I just don't know to what extent the building and escalators compare to transit.
No, I should have said elevators.
Oh, elevators. Okay, all right. Yeah, I just didn't. I wasn't gonna say. I was thinking about escalators. I wasn't gonna say that they aren't comparable. I just don't know to what extent they are, or not.
Yeah. No, the reason that escalators are more important in transit is just I think the peak trips tend to be, you get the pulses.
Yeah.
Even in an office building, even people coming in over a 1 or 2 hour period, they're coming in every minute and moving every minute, but
Right.
the trains aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Best I can find is from 2021, which is not that far back again.
Not that far back enough.
And it says that there are 177 escalators in the MBTA system. 177 total. I think that's from a Channel 5
factor.
Oh, geez.
Got to be safety. If the
How about that?
So then there.
Yes.
So 177. We have 17 out here.
Yes.
Oh, so that's roughly 10%.
Yep. And I just, this is cracking me up, but I just got to share this. The article that I just pulled up from Google from 2021. It's the one where Kathy Curran from Channel 5 interviewed me after the elevator malfunction at Back Bay that had people toppling onto each other.
It's as if you're about to say, "Oh my God, I can't
Yep.
believe that happened." You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go through it now. I mean, I will point out that back then the T's alert system shows 7 unavailable, and now we're up to 17 at this moment. Oh, but then again, but that's 17 including elevator. Sorry.
And this one including elevators?
Yes.
Or it's just escalators?
On this page.
Yeah, I see elevators too. Okay.
Elevator 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
5.
So 17 alerts, 5 for elevator, the rest for escalator. Okay.
All right.
Out of 177 escalators. I'll stop there for the stats.
So I was like,
But
yeah.
I think to Len's point, we need to figure out a way to judge whether or not the problem is getting better or worse, right?
Right.
And the 2 ways to do that would be to look at historically, and when did the number of alerts peak? Are we at peak? Are we down from, like, say 2001, where supply chain would have been a legitimate excuse? And then the other way to compare would be compare against. I think Len was going at the percentage. What percentage of the system is down? Could we compare against other transit agencies? Like, what percentage of New York City subways, escalators are working condition, or SEPTA are working condition versus our subways, our escalators.
Sounds like an assignment for somebody. I'll be happy to take it on in April. I'm just a little busy in March.
Understood.
Yeah, so yeah, and then with our system, we interested to see if there's some kind of pattern. So I wonder who deals with this stuff in our system. I'll ask. Do you happen to know, Stefan? Yeah.
I don't.
There also should be annual reports, accessibility reports.
Oh, that's true.
That would be one way to get a handle on historic trends, because they're probably done the same way each year.
Right.
No, those are a legal requirement.
Right. Just wondering to what extent. You think those would be reported to FTA?
I think they might be reported to FTA. I don't know how many. My guess is that the major metropolitan transit authorities have slightly different frameworks under which they, but I would guess that all of them tackle this. I know there's especially some issues in systems like Washington, D.C., where pretty much the whole system was built at one time. You tend to get kind of episodic maintenance issues because of the fact that, the timing, like our with a 100-year-old system, you've got equipment of all different ages.
Yeah. Right. But still, I mean, but it's like equipment of all different ages. But I think certain kinds of equipment maybe come in clusters. So like for instance, like the the red and orange line trains. Like they're coming online pretty much at the same time. I mean, to the extent they aren't, it's not intentional because I think we intended to have the red and orange line trains probably within the 2 to 3 years of each other. I mean, so we're gonna have like a big cluster of trains like moving through this is through their age at the same time. But yeah, I know what you mean. So yeah, I'm seeing the National Transit Database. I'll spend some time in that. All right. Yeah, I could spend a lot of time in this thing. So so are we gonna like aim to be out by 6 o'clock?
Sure.
Uh,
Antoinette,
We can.
Governor Healy and state officials were
Oops, sorry about that.
um, so for the capital planning, capital investment program, we did a little bit of discussion about the equity analysis for the bus network redesign, and that's kind of in preparation for a visit with Stephen Andrews, Stephen Povich, and now it seems like blanking on his name will come to me. The third person wants to meet with us, and because that third person wants to meet with us, we have put the meeting off until April because that's when he'll be available. And so I think next month we will look at the capital investment plan, which should be released before our next CIP meeting. And we talked about I think it was the second quarter report in revenues expenses report. And ridership is down still. So the revenue coming in from fares is still low. It's below what they budgeted, and it's below what they thought would be the likely scenario of ridership. But what's making up for that shortfall is the sales tax revenues are up. And so people in this Commonwealth are spending money, and so the T gets a portion of that, and so because they're spending more, the T is getting more, so it's helping out with that respect. And also the T has some other like non-fare revenues, non-fare and non-tax revenues that are coming in right now. It's escaping me what those are. But also partly what is helping the budget too is that the hiring isn't going as quickly as they had hoped. So there's some positions that are still open. So that's that. So that was a big thing that we discussed.
Len, how much of the revenue change do you think, or anybody, do you think might be attributable to continuing work from home?
That's what they think it is.
Yeah,
So
okay.
so let's see. So the heavy rails are all down. Like they are in the 40 to 50% of pre-COVID ridership. Buses, I think, in the 70%. Commuter rail kind of varies by line. But I think it's in the high 60s. Ferry, I think it's pretty up there. Those are the primary modes. So yeah, I just think there's just been a change in the pattern of transit usage. Now, one thing I thought to do is to see what the highway counts are. I figured probably the best way of getting that is probably getting the toll figures, not so much the amount, I guess, as much as it is the number of cars that are on the road. Because if we have more cars than before, then that may indicate mode shift as opposed to work pattern shift. And the mode shift could be due to two things. One is that people just don't want to use transit, so they haven't moved. They just would prefer not to use transit for any number of reasons. And the other could be that the people who used to use transit during the pandemic kind of moved far enough away from where they were that they are now driving because either that's more convenient for them or it's the only option available to them.
Or, we're still running way less service than we were at the peak of the pandemic, and
Yeah.
that service is less reliable, and the service cuts will continue until morale improves. So is it any wonder we're running fewer people?
Yeah. No,
Like,
the
the service is worse. people
Right.
like came back to the office for their 2 days a week, and then their train got stuck and they had to wait 20 minutes, and or they
Right.
had to wait 20 minutes for the next one, and then now they're driving.
Right. Right.
Like, until we start running frequent, reliable service on all modes, is it any wonder that ridership is down? And look at the commuter rail. The commuter rail service frequencies have increased, and ridership now on weekends, especially, is higher than it was pre-pandemic.
Right. Right. I guess so. Then I hear you. You made that argument before, and I understand where you come from. That but was ridership on weekends just low to start? Because I know they cut the cost. So I think a big part of what has helped the commuter rail is that it's like, isn't it like $10? You ride as much as you want on both weekend days.
Yes, and
Yeah.
they've said before that that helped fare recovery on weekends, but it didn't. They didn't mention the impact on ridership.
But the only way that would work though, right, is if more people were using it. No.
No, not necessarily.
Not
It would
as well.
help that if people went from commuter rail fare evasion to purchasing a ticket.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. So okay, okay, I got it. I was just thinking of recovery ratio, in that respect to um, fare evasion. I was just thinking of it as the amount of revenue they got versus the amount that it costs to run the system. But you're thinking of it in terms of evasion. I get. Okay.
I mean, I think we're both thinking of it in terms of revenue per train.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah,
But you're
commuter rail, yes, ridership is increasing on our peer systems like New York City, like Philadelphia. Our ridership is way more stagnant than they are.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So they've all
New
come
York
back.
City, New York City subway ridership has really come back in a
Yeah.
big way.
Yeah. Well, but New York is just such the entity unto itself. And that's also, I think, kind of one of the problems. It's like, what would you say is like the transit system that is most comparable to us? Would it be Chicago?
Philly.
Philly? Really? I just think of Philly as like smaller, too small to be comparable to us.
Well,
Sh-
not really. They have
Mhm.
two to three heavy rail subway lines that run
Yeah.
in parallel downtown with a light rail system that then branches out into the suburbs.
All right.
Until very recently, we both ran trolley buses. We both have urban regional rail.
And they have buses.
Yeah.
All right. So then maybe that is the most comparable one. So they have recovered.
Let me check their ridership stats.
Two other cities that would be interesting would be San Francisco and Seattle.
Well, I don't think Seattle's that comparable to us, right? I mean, they don't have any heavy
Well,
rail.
the system is much newer, but I'm just thinking in terms of employment.
Yeah, but they don't have any heavy rail. They just have that one little light rail system, right? That comes from the airport.
Yeah, but it's expanded quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, Chicago might be the next comparable one. It's a bigger city.
Yeah,
but,
it's a lot bigger though.
but it's a lot bigger. Yeah, but and it has more lines, but it's not like, I think, well, there's certainly between us and New York. I mean, so before I would compare us to New York, I compare us to Chicago. But
Yeah.
I didn't realize Philly wasn't similar to us. And DC could be another somewhat comparable line. It's got about the same number of heavy rail lines. Yeah. But it doesn't have any commuter. But we can just factor out the commuter. It has bus. So I guess it'd be Philly and DC.
You could also look at a couple of the Canadian cities.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be interesting.
It doesn't say, but I found an article that said that SEPTA had gotten, I think, 48% of pre-pandemic riders back by this point last year. I'm not sure if they're also sort of plateauing.
Right. It's kind of like where we were last year, but we are kind of plateauing. Bus is kind of, well, it's going up a little bit, but but not much, you know. Oh, so that's where we are, you know. Oh. So
Well,
that's my,
Jacob, I can't find anything that's a current comparison, so I'm going to leave it to you. I remember it was about a year ago, there was a publication in terms of fares and service, right? I remember seeing the top, I think it was the top 7 agencies in the country, all compared. But that was geared towards the fare equity analysis, I believe, not in terms of ridership stats.
There, I mean, Len mentioned in the beginning, the National Transit Database, that, you know, there is some comparison on a national basis, but it may not be as detailed as what you guys are interested in.
there's the monthly ridership time series. Let's see. Product year 2023. This is 2022. Let's see what happens if I do a flag yet.
You know, some of the European systems might be interesting too, just from the point of view of pandemic. Pandemic and post-pandemic changes.
Maybe I have to search SEPTA. No, oops. I'll have to learn how to use this data set. Oh, there it is. Never mind. It's like, I do that a lot. It's like, click the wrong place.
Len, is this something you want to screen share?
I'm on another computer. Sorry.
Okay.
I've opted to just have 2 computers versus one big monitor, because I can carry my 2 laptops around, and usually I do, yeah. So whenever, yeah. So that's how that's how I have like a lot of screen real estate. It's just kind of between 2 systems, so it's inconvenient when it comes to sharing from one to the other, but it also allows me to adjust the screens, meaning to where I want them to be at any given point in time. And which I kind of like about laptops is that you can, you know, push the screen back and forth as opposed to a monitor, which they kind of more or less locked into the position. You can change it somewhat, you know, but not as easily as you can the 2 laptop screens. But sometimes I wish I could just like copy and paste from one system to the other. That'd be kind of like the Matrix, right? Going from the.
There's actually, yeah, I'll talk to you about it afterwards, Len, but there is a gadget that lets you do that.
I have to connect machines though, right?
Yeah, there's a USB dongle device that you can plug into both, and you will be able to copy and paste and use a single mouse and keyboard between the 2 of them.
Oh, Stefan, you are making up for that trick that I showed you about accessing, you know, the tab that has the audio going. You matched that, you know, and took it to a whole nother level. See, I knew that, you know.
After we're done, I'll email you a link to that product. I used to use it when I had 2 computers at my desk, back in the
And-
days before
And
pandemic.
will it work between two OSs?
Oh yeah.
So, because one's a Dell and one's a PC and one's a Mac. All right,
Oh yeah.
cool. Wow, it didn't even occur to me that something like that existed. I should have thought about that, but no problem. All right.
Do you want me to bring over my notes from the other
Yeah,
subcommittee?
I'm done.
Or
I'm
you?
done.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure if you were trying to pull something up as a
What-
final note about the ridership and stats and things.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the file now, but I don't know what's going to tell me. So,
Oh, okay. Well, do you want another minute?
no, you can talk, and then I'll see what's in here.
Okay. All right. So here's my notes from marketing, communication, operations. I think Jacob, out of the five of us, Jacob was the one who was not there. So Jacob, do you want to just browse the notes that I've got on my screen and ask any questions? I'm happy to verbalize the salient points if you want. It's really up to you, Jacob.
Just glancing over it now.
Take your time. And, between the other folks, Len, Wig, and Craig, feel free to call out anything from memory or from my notes that is worth verbalizing for the record and for Jacob.
The the continuing cost blowout at the Quincy garage is just
Yes.
strange.
Yep.
What's costing all the money?
I don't know if there was any answer about why it suddenly went way out of proportion. That's the wrong expression. Higher than expected. But certainly I think there was only one bidder previously, and now that it's design build, there's more people coming forward. I don't think we talked about during the subcommittee meeting when was design build sort of revisited as a viable process. My memory is that design build got nixed as a general principle, but then it came back into greater favor fairly recently. Does that ring true for you guys?
I thought it was with the Green Line GLX.
Yeah, with GLX is where it really succeeded. It succeeded very well, very highly. But I thought design build had also been tried for some smaller scale things before GLX. And that's why GLX was given the green light for design build. But
Well, I
haven't
think
researched that yet.
I think with GLX, it was set up by the first experience, which was kind of a no bid agreement where both the few people at the T with large project experience at that point in time and the Rhode Island company, they just blew the project up. There was absolutely no discipline on it. And I think also, I mean, there's a real question out there as to whether the Green Line project would have kept as much on budget and schedule without the project manager.
Good
there was a pretty large search that resulted in John Dalton, and he took a lot of time lining that up before he pulled the trigger on starting the project.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that-
now we're
that's
letting
right.
him go.
Yeah, well, I
But
don't know
he,
if it's us.
he was also the highest paid employee of the T, more than the general manager.
Yeah, but
So if you don't have the next big project lined up for him and ready to go, you got to let him go. Or maybe he doesn't
Well-
want, or maybe he wants to leave.
well, 300 grand is nothing compared to the losses at the T, but I think the latter part of what you just said may be correct. I think for one thing, he probably needs a number of months off, right? I mean, he's probably been living.
But
this project.
let's not.
Go ahead.
I think going back to the design build, I think it's going to be interesting. Well, because it's a limited sample set, we don't know if design build worked because design build is a great idea, or if design build worked because we had a really strong program manager. And I would bet that it works when you have a really strong program manager. It's no different. You could do design build, when you're adding renovating a kitchen in your house if you really wanted to, right? It's not. It isn't a unique concept strictly to the transit industry. It's to any construction project. But either you negotiate everything out and hammer every last detail out in a contract ahead of the project, and you build in a little bit of contingency, but you spend all the time up front, or you give yourself you get the general size of the general guidelines of the project, but you give yourself more flexibility, knowing that you don't know what you're going to get when you start tearing down old structures and going behind old walls and all that kind of stuff. But that only works to the point of discipline if you have a really strong project manager who holds who pushes back when their contractor says, oh, this is going to cost X much more, and says, pushes back and says, baloney, it's not going to cost that much more. Or what other option do we have that's a less expensive option? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there's another factor here, which was there was a lot of discipline built into the design build framing. In other words, the companies that signed up, they effectively guaranteed the price. And in order to do that, I think companies who couldn't have done it probably self-selected out because they were otherwise going to lose a lot of money.
I'll put this link in the Zoom chat. This is I just found the actual manual for design build guidelines from the agency. Not really relevant for here, but
No,
certainly.
it's just some. I was saying while I was looking at the spreadsheet for I got from the National NTD regarding system uses. No, it's just wild too. Cool.
Yeah, that's definitely something for later. I didn't know that the Office of Inspector General, what I've got up here. Yeah, Craig, since you can't see it, on mass.gov, the Office of Inspector General has a page dedicated to the design build process with a list of approved projects and how the process kicks off. And also I found the MBTA official guide doc, and there's several more as well. I don't think I've seen those before.
But also to Craig's point, I think he's going to be highly sought after.
Absolutely. John Dalton got a resume that can't be beat.
To use a sports analogy, he's a free agent now, right? He didn't re-sign with the home team. He's put himself out in the free agency market, and maybe somebody would say, hey, you could say, hey, look, I got the green line done in Boston. I could do imagine what I could do for you, LA or Chicago.
But how on earth are we supposed to field a competitive baseball team if we don't re-sign free agents?
Yep.
Well,
It's
Yeah,
like
so-
there's new talent coming up all the time, right? They get
So-
experience somewhere else, then you just kind of hire them.
Yeah,
Mm.
but there's another issue here, which may be behind Craig's attitude, and that is John Dalton's discipline in the situations he chooses to go into,
Right.
and his definition of the role. In other words, he and the state effectively had to come to terms on the authority he would have. And my sense is just, I had a lot of meetings with him before the project started, not so many once it started. But I think they came to a meeting of the minds, and I think he believed he could do it. And I just don't know how common that's going to be with other people. There are great construction managers, but I don't know how many of them there are.
Can you guys hear me? Or is my computer just did something a bit odd? Can you guys hear me? And
I hear you.
Yes.
You're
okay,
just
good.
fine.
Thank you.
Can hear you just fine. Wow.
On the screen, you see that the article I've got pulled up?
No. Which part? Oh, the Dalton thing?
Yeah, that's I hadn't caught that from November, that John Dalton is going to be, well, as it says in here, the extension doesn't necessarily mean John will stay the full 6 months, but it's an extension beyond what was expected. I
Yeah,
guess just
well,
take that for what it's worth.
I would say, it's a good idea for he and the government here to make sure that he's around until there's an effective sign off and both agree to it.
Right, I'll pull that back off the screen and wrap up with the subcommittee notes.
But just to go back to we were talking about this all started off the conversation about the Quincy Garage. We did spend 10 minutes in that subcommittee talking about that, talking about how the original numbers were astronomical. Which is why they stopped the project. They did a year ago. They did a whole groundbreaking, you had politicians with gold shovels, digging a hole, and essentially nothing happened in the last year other than clearing the site, and that's because they paused the project, rebid it in the new method, so it theoretically should start going faster. So it's a much reduced cost. But it's still high, right? For a bus garage, if you think about what it costs to build a bus garage, it's not the gazillion dollars it was now, but it's still it goes to show you it's hard. It's anything the team wants to do infrastructure wise. astronomically expensive. So it's amazing how much any construction in the Northeast costs.
Exactly.
How much does it cost?
I'm gonna pull that up right
I
now.
forget the number. Yeah, like I feel like they were able to trim like 200 million off the project. It was like
Okay.
it had like ballooned to 800 and they went down to 600, but that's me off the top of my head.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know whether to be surprised by that or not. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Go ahead, Greg. Finish your thought.
I guess I would say, Len, is like if you think about it, how if you were to pay if the T was a business and not a quasi government agency, how many trips out of that garage? If there was a surcharge on the trips out of that garage to pay for that brand new building, how many trips out of that garage and how many fares? You know, what would that? How many years would it take to pay back the investment in that garage?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. You know. And like I said, I just don't know how to think about that number. You know, so I just I don't have any like real basis of comparison, you know, or I just don't know how to think about it. And I mean, that's a gap in my knowledge. I mean, so it's not that I'm saying that that's unknowable. I'm just saying that I don't know how to think about it. So it's something for me to try to wrap my head around.
Yep.
But you see this bad though, right, Greg? Craig, sorry about that.
What's that?
You
Len?
see that as bad. You know, you see it as problematic.
I do, because I want to do more, right? Like I think we should be we should. I want the T to be ambitious. I want the T to build more things. I want it to do more extensions. But unless we figure out how to cut the cost and do things more efficiently, that's not going to happen. So to me, I see this as basic as a bus garage is a big old warehouse, right? That holds buses. This shouldn't be. This is not a highly automated factory or something like that. It's a garage, right? It's called a bus garage. If that costs $600 million, like what is something hard like the blue red connector costs?
Well, I mean, are they going to do maintenance in this garage?
Yeah, I believe it's going to be.
I mean, so it's more than just
all kinds
storage, right?
of maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a maintenance facility as well as a garage.
Yeah, and for the record, Craig, I have up on the screen that the bids last year came in at about 360 million, and the board approved 280 for construction. So not 400s, not 600s. It was 300 before it was stopped, and now budgeted for 280. I mean, 280 million for a garage. Yeah, I still think that is very high, but
If you're going to do maintenance,
electrification with 20 gantries for vehicles. And also bear in mind it's a two-level facility too.
I mean, so what level facility you said, Stefan?
The last time it was going to be a dual level facility. I don't believe the buses are going up to the second level, but
yeah, it's not buses though. It's like putting in some office space. I think they cut part of that as part of that's where the cost reduction was. They're limiting the office space.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it's not a 1-for-1. Like the going design build didn't magically, like, oh, we did design build, that's how we saved $100 million. It's design build plus they trim the number of bays, plus they trim the office space. They cut a whole bunch of bells and whistles. That's the same thing they did with the Green Line, right?
Yes,
it's like they walked away from the Taj Mahal concept.
Right. Yep.
You know who would be interesting to have advise on something like this would be someone like Amazon. You know, their infrastructure, including tractor trailer, infrastructure is staggeringly large compared to any transit agency in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely.
Those tractor,
Yeah.
those tractor,
The other one would be a UPS or a FedEx, right?
yeah.
What
exactly.
what would it cost them to build a 100-vehicle facility?
Yeah, exactly right.
Well-
And whether they're doing it in-house or shopping it out, they've got to have a handle on the cost management.
Well, I would say maybe probably the better comparison is transit agency, right? So see if some other transit agency has built a bus maintenance garage and see how much that's cost.
Yeah, but honestly, Lynn, I would be worried that those much larger private sector companies have better cost control.
Okay, so you want to compare us to the private sector? That's fine. I get you. I mean, but then if you do private sector, your control needs to be for the region, though, right?
Yeah, I don't know what they would think about that, but I would guess that their best project managers could be helpful at looking at something like this.
Right. But you want
facility.
to compare their costs in the Boston region, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
those regional costs are really well understood. Labor and materials costs by region. The whole large scale construction the whole construction industry has good data on that stuff. It's just a massive business, much bigger than transit.
Yeah. All right. Well, go for it. I'm looking at the ridership data. It's on spreadsheet I got that I thought was just going to give me 1 year's worth of data. It's giving me everything from 2002 to 2022. So I'll be able to get that ridership information for various transit agencies. It's
Very cool.
it's a beautiful data set.
Back to the just on the kind of construction costs. The other comparison would be other similar. So private sector is one, other transit agencies another. I'd be curious if there's any other areas of expertise within the state that do large construction projects. And what I'm thinking of is Massport, for an example. Like Massport's doing a massive extension of Terminal E right now. Like how do they do that? How do they put that out to bid? How do they do how do they project management? Are they using design build? What are they doing for something like that?
No, that's a really good question, and Massport is almost quasi-private, right? Because it just has, I think, a little bit more separation. I wouldn't be confident of their ability.
That and they have money to burn.
I wouldn't be confident a priori, but you could be right.
What exactly is the level of I don't want to say oversight, but I mean that's what comes to mind. What does Beacon Hill have on Massport for control or guidance or pulling strings?
Well, they have a fair amount. I think a couple different things. One, Logan is the only large-scale airport north of New York City, right? So there's not a lot of comparisons. They do have more. Well, it's also a higher end business, right? Aviation is a higher end business than surface transportation. And so you expect them to have more access to capital and more control because of that. On the other hand, unlike the Amazons and FedExes and UPSs of the world, they don't have a lot of competition within their region. So that probably gives them some leeway that those competitors that Craig and I mentioned don't have. So it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic. Another thing is that aviation was crushed more than surface transportation at the beginning of the pandemic. I've been on the Massport CAC and the Logan CAC that preceded it for 15 years. Like T-Rock, it's a little tiny state agency, but we have a real budget on the Massport CAC that T-Rock does not have. The other thing I want to mention, although especially because we're not really out in public too much, but you know, Lisa Weiland's job was really tough in the beginning of the pandemic, and I've got some problems with how Massport handles its environmental health impact analyses and everything, but I can testify firsthand that was a crushing job the first year of the pandemic that she had to hold up to.
Remind me of one thing, Wig. CAC is what?
Massport Community Advisory Committee.
Thank
I
you.
think is what we call it. We're actually looking for a second full-time staff member now, but Aaron Toffler is, he's executive director the last couple of years. He's got a pretty good salary. Like this committee, the executive committee of that has monthly meetings. They're different, and that's fine. There's each one of these little groups kind of has to follow their own paths.
Yeah.
So what does SEPTA stand for? SC, what's the S in SEPTA for?
Southeast.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Before I leave the topic of Massport, I'm trying to find something on that Massport CAC.
Yeah, if you just
I didn't know.
Google MCAC or
Yeah.
Massport CAC,
Got
it
it.
should pop.
Got it. Yeah, I did not know of this organization.
It's actually
Website
Southeastern.
needs updating. The calendar is good. When the upcoming meetings are, but the other portion of the website is not very up to date.
Sorry. Oh, goodness.
That's okay.
Sorry. Yawn before I can turn off the microphone.
It's good to be sleepy.
Yes, it is. Oh, I'm going to sleep well.
When you need to sleep, it's good to be sleepy.
Oh, yeah, I will sleep well tonight. Yeah.
Oh, this is a huge list.
Yeah,
Oh my
well,
goodness.
yeah, it's mostly, Massport has the ports as well as multiple airports, right? Hanscom is almost as busy as Logan. It's just smaller planes.
Right. But I mean, there's members from Concord, Lexington, Belmont on the Massport advisory.
There is one reason. Well, one thing, it's legislative, right? It's legislatively determined. But for another thing, the primary interest of most members and people on the ground who pay attention is noise annoyance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a very large difference in how annoyed people are from transportation noise, and that large difference shows up. See, on the surface, the noise doesn't travel very far, but when you've got a plane in a mile in the air, there's a very large area of almost equal noise underneath, and that area has a very large population. And the variability in human noise sensitivity is easily a factor of 100.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
within that area, there are going to be quite a few highly annoyed people,
Yes.
and they're truly highly annoyed.
Yes. And it correlates with other behavior patterns too, I find too. So it's like, so
I just realized I see the pattern here, because Massport also owns and operates Hanscom, which is in Lexington, and Worcester Regional Airport.
Yeah.
So actually, that's actually surprising then. So that explains why we've got Lincoln, Concord, Lexington,
Right.
this advisory committee, because they are adjacent to Hanscom. But it's surprising that there aren't more adjacent to Worcester.
Well,
I don't see
Worcester's volume is tiny by comparison with Logan and Hanscom.
Really? Hanscom
Yeah.
is a greater number of flights than Worcester. I did not know that.
Hanscom's flight number is about the same as Logan's.
No.
as you said, it's smaller planes though, Stefan.
Yes.
Smaller planes.
Right. Oh yeah, but I had no idea it was comparable in terms of just numbers of flights.
Yep.
Wow, I did not know that.
You can whip out those small planes pretty fast.
Yep.
Wow.
Mm.
Interesting though that Massport has that organization, and as you were just saying, Wig, it's staffed by full-time people. Does that? I'm guessing we're going to say that maps more closely to the MBTA advisory board than to the ROC, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that might be, but
Yeah.
it maps to ROC with regard to the vast majority of the members are just local volunteers.
Interesting.
And it's a lot of work. I think that this committee is more characterized. I mean, TROC is more characterized by people who are really interested in transit, as opposed to the major perceived impacts on the community to external bodies, right? I mean, the Massport CAC is largely people who aren't as interested in Logan operations or Massport operations as they are in containing the impacts on their community.
Right. Yeah, I can see it. I got you. Right.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're more like, we're more systems. We have a global perspective. With respect to the MBTA system operations, the funding, and the rider perspective. And I see that the CAC is they're more advocacy, or single issue.
Right, but if you go, for example, just to take an example, if you go look up the World Health Organization Europe systematic review of noise in 2018, they look at road noise, rail noise, and aviation noise, and in their systematic review of the health effects, they handicap cardiovascular disease from high levels of noise as a much more serious issue. It leads directly to premature mortality for the people who live right next to highways, or right, like if you're under the 33 left departure pathway in Chelsea or East Boston, there are, cardiovascular disease, learning disabilities of the children, serious sleep disturbance of the community at those noise levels. Those are all considered to be, by the professional environmental epidemiology community much more serious effects than noise annoyance. But it's really noise annoyance that drives the conversation,
Right.
because the people who are highly annoyed are truly highly annoyed. I mean, I think they are their best own meters. Sometimes people who aren't bothered by noise just think they're wimps, but that's not the case at all.
No, no, no. I can believe that, but I will say, I mean, from my experience, I mean, the folks who are highly annoyed by noise, tend to be highly annoyed by lots of things, because the ones who, um, I I'm on the receiving end of that. I mean, it's like just one more thing, that I'm on the receiving end of from them. You know what I mean? As opposed to that being the only thing, it's like one of a list.
Well, here's an interesting thing
yeah.
while we're on this topic.
Yeah.
The US is really very far behind in this kind of holistic view of public health compared to Western Europe, for example. But there was a recent aviation noise study done by HMMH, which is the largest environmental consultant to government and happens to be in Eastern Massachusetts. They do not have science in-house, but they relied on one of the best noise experts in the US, who is semi-retired but worked at BB&N. I mean, really technical noise guy. And they published a study almost 2 years ago now called the NES, Noise Environmental Survey. And while 12.5% of the population was annoyed, highly annoyed in 1992, when the national noise regulations were put in place under FICON, that was basically Schultz, a great social scientist. Today, so 12% highly annoyed at 65 DNL at that point, an annual DBA metric. Now 20% are highly annoyed at 50 DNL. 50 DNL is a pretty low noise level. There is no so all the major airports in the US soundproof everyone who wants it within 65 DNL, including Logan. Whenever the noise map changes, they draw up the new housing that's included in there, and they will noise proof every one of those houses. But they can't do that for 20% of the population. That's that's highly annoyed by 50 DNL.
And what else is 50 DNL comparable to? I mean, how does that compare?
To a very light level of traffic.
A light level. So they're highly annoyed by a very light level of traffic.
Yeah,
and
that level of noise. Now the patterns aren't the same, right? I mean,
right.
the jet patterns are, they're highly repetitive. When they're on a runway, it's like every 90 seconds or every 2 minutes.
Right.
And because they're high, you hear those planes for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's. Go ahead, Craig.
I was going to ask that, are those where are those maps available about what the coverage area is?
Yeah, so that's
is that something?
Question. Yeah, Massport puts out, in part because of their capital budget, they put out a significant general environmental report every single year, a larger one every 3 to 4 years, and then they put out quite a series of other reports. But the larger annual report is called EDR for Environmental Data Report. EDR, Environmental Data Report. If you just Google that, you'll get taken there. The larger one is called ESPR. These are really big reports. They are a little bit off in what they focus on. They do not understand the environmental epidemiology and the medical pathways of impacts of aviation, whether they be noise or ultrafine particles or whatever. So they, they kind of, the studies have almost the same form year after year after year, and they really need to be updated to catch up with the Europeans and the Canadians and the other advanced economies that are more up to date, mostly because they focus more on environmental health. For example, Switzerland has had for quite a while a national noise model. It includes every facade of every single building in Switzerland. Now, Switzerland is a little hilly, so having a noise model that gives you the noise levels from each one of these factors for every building facade in the country is quite an accomplishment compared to the kind of thing we do here. Yep, you got it.
I've never even heard of MBTA doing anything with regard to noise at this level. Is it even required, or is it only required for?
Well, yeah.
light?
So let me make a comment on that. Yeah, the research group I started at Tufts, but which includes doctoral students and master's students from all the research universities. So I started that 15 years ago to focus on ultrafine particles and highway effects. Our fourth doctorate is a staff scientist at Volpe National Transportation Center. He recently collected the noise data from the 90 largest airports in the United States and did a noise analysis by census block group for the whole United States for all 90 of the largest airports by census block group.
Holy
And
mackerel.
that's a model that includes both aviation and road noise.
That's astounding. How long did that take?
Well,
I'm sure probably
Go
automated
ahead.
it, Stefan. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
well, Volpe, Volpe is a pretty good national transportation impact center. So
Yeah. I mean, they're just down the road here in Cambridge, so.
Mhm.
yeah, it's right
So-
right across from MIT.
Yeah, I
It will
mean, it
have
wouldn't
to
be.
it will have to be moved when MIT's with larger scale development in Kendall Square.
Right.
Volpe will have to be reconfigured, but they have some pretty smart people. I mean, we also had the number 2 person at Health Effects Institute in Boston, which is the largest air pollution accountability group in the world. She's the number two scientist on the recent update on transportation impacts. And our first doctorate, who's faculty at University of Georgia, is one of 7 people on EPA CASAC who will determine all future significant air pollution regulations in the United States.
Wow. But again, air pollution, but noise pollution seems to be just focused on aircraft.
Well, you have to have Logan burns twice as much fuel on the tarmac and in the first 3,000 feet than the whole MBTA system across eastern Massachusetts.
I'm sorry, could you just say that again? Just say the same thing again. I didn't.
The MBTA, the T burns 20 million gallons of diesel per year.
Yep.
Logan burns 40 million gallons just on the tarmac and the 3,000 feet above the tarmac.
That's appalling.
A year?
That's not surprising.
Yes, a year.
Right.
Jets have big engines.
Yes, we do, of course. I mean, it takes a lot to lift that much weight off the ground and keep it aloft, so that's not surprising. I thought you were going to say a day, because that's when you said like the year. It's like, okay, so it's twice as much as a T is a year. All right. I could buy that easily. All right. easily. You know, I'm surprised it's not more. You know,
I'm stunned.
But it's a lot less people who are using the service.
Yeah, that's for sure.
yeah, but it's a lot more. It's like I said, but it's a lot more work that it's doing. You
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like-
Taking off. Plus, there's a lot of ground equipment, but taking
Yeah.
off takes a hell of a lot of energy.
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, yeah, I'm surprised. I'm surprised it's not more. You know, oh, I'm not finding elevator data in TV. In TV, you know, may not be looking in the right place. You know, I found a lot of other good stuff.
Oh, I'm sure.
But
So,
I know. I'm sorry.
No, I'm
Glenn.
fine,
Just
I'm fine.
one more thing. This is a little bit of a diversion from our normal conversation, but I think it is proper to see the transportation system as unified from time to time, and to consider the interactions and collective benefits and impacts. So.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, my goal. I'm not so much thinking about air, although you take transportation to get to air. Is to see the entire transportation network thought of as a transit network being priced accordingly. You know, and I should say access to it priced accordingly. You know. Anyways, well,
Yep.
so I
Well-
guess we're gonna go ahead. Someone's gonna
Right.
say something.
No, I was just going to bring up a couple of other things before we decide to wrap.
Yeah.
But finish your thought.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna start kind of wrapping it up, saying we're gonna have Richard Dean next time. And if anyone has any ideas for someone they want in April, please let us know.
Yep. And for the next subcommittee on my end, I'm gonna reach out to Logan Nash's group again in the customer technology,
Right. Oh,
because I'd
Right.
like to hear a little bit about how the interactive speed restriction dashboard that was just recently announced is actually going to behave.
right.
Um,
Actually, okay. And also, I want to talk with maybe Jonathan and hopefully Josh will be there because a group in Arlington, one of the members did this report on what the bus network redesign impact would be on Arlington bus users, and so I mean he did a fair amount of work on it. You know, I mean, with understanding, that his perspective was limited, but just kind of wanted to get the T's take on it. So I wanted to give this to Josh, and ask him, what would be the best way to get feedback, from the T on it. And for the rest of you, I know this seems Arlington centric, and it is. But I think the answers that we get, as to the rationale behind decisions, could be applied elsewhere. So if the group will entertain that, then I'll bring that forward, at your next MCOP meeting.
yes, please.
Yeah, I meant to bring it up the last meeting, but for some reason I forgot. So
That sounds good.
all right.
One more thing to mention, that this is from the general manager's report from the board meeting just last week. So this is pretty fresh.
Right.
I don't know if anybody saw the dispatcher here. Successes since June 2022. I think I might be reading this wrong, or I'm just not being critical enough. 32 dispatchers, 27 permanent with 5 spares is what they are calling the identified need for current best in class staffing. Okay. It says that currently, so I believe this was as of when Jeff Gonneville presented this, which was last week, there's currently 21 with 5 on loan, whatever that means. 26, okay. And they say that the minimum target coverage is 24. So we have at the moment enough dispatchers to meet the minimum target coverage, but I'm not gleaning from this whether that's at the current reduced
Hmm.
service levels that went into effect after the FTA
Yeah, right.
safety review, or
Yeah.
is this talking about getting us back to staffing that will bring us back up to the previous levels of service? Do you gents know? I don't think I saw it in this report, and I don't want to make any assumptions either way.
From
Yeah.
the conversations that I've had that have been happening on the sort of the transit matters and other forums, it seems like this is enough dispatcher staffing to run a full service. However, they're still dealing with operator availability. So now the bottleneck for service delivery isn't dispatchers, it's operators,
Even for heavy rail.
even for heavy rail.
Interesting.
Okay. That's good to hear. I mean, not good to hear that it's still
good to know.
that's a bottleneck, but I mean, it's good to know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We-
So they moved the ball down the field a little bit. At least dispatching is, yeah. Okay. Excellent.
It is a problem. Not to be completely anecdotal here, but you know, I'm back on the red line multiple times a week, and you know, I was at Ashmont Station. I just saw a red line train pull away at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the next one didn't leave for 24 minutes. Like 24 minutes at 8 o'clock in the morning is not what your heavy rail should be doing in a functioning city.
Yeah. How was the crowding level at that time?
I mean, to be honest, the crowding wasn't that bad. If I'm going to be completely honest, it wasn't like it wasn't as jammed in as I would have expected at that point. It's just it's a long time during the height of a rush hour. It goes back to, we're circular back to our kind of our initial conversation, right? Around, you know, why aren't people taking the T? Part of it is because people aren't going into the T, aren't going into work as often. But another part of it is the service isn't that reliable to a point where that was made.
And
Very
it's getting a lot of press too. So
Yeah. What time of day? You said it was 8 o'clock on a weekday.
I guess it was actually it was closer to it was 7:15 in the morning. I was trying to get in for 8.
Yeah, still though. Did you know about any, or did you hear about any alerts or service problems during that time frame or just before?
Nope.
I mean, I remember hearing that there was a piece of track equipment that derailed.
Yeah, that was on Friday.
Yesterday morning.
That was Friday.
Yeah, it was smooth sailing after that. So the schedule was, I literally just, you know, I was just missed one, and it was a full somewhere in the 20 to 24 minute range between trains.
But what day? When was this?
That was just Monday, just 2 days ago,
Right.
or just yesterday.
Yesterday.
Literally yesterday. I tried to get in.
Yeah, I don't know, because what can happen, is we can have switching issues. A lot of times, what happens is you have these medical emergencies or these police actions, which just stops the system, and
Yeah, I've taken the train enough times. It didn't smell like any of these, right? Like I've gotten stuck in my fair share of police actions and other things where you're just not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, like
that. All right.
Case in point, I mean, I'm assuming you guys all were following the news about the power disruption this morning.
No, I didn't hear about it.
Basically, the majority of all lines were stopped because of some kind of a power surge.
I thought it was isolated to green line.
I believe it affected orange and red as well. I'm trying to look at that right now. Yeah, multiple lines
I think it affected them for different lengths, though.
You know
I
what
don't
caused that?
As of the article I'm reading, updated 5 hours ago, Pesaturo says the root cause is still under investigation.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it was multiple lines. And yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, power quality at the T. I don't remember ever in my memory,
First of all,
not
you're gonna
really
lay down
an
the
issue.
wall.
I mean, in terms of like the power being available, I don't remember ever hearing about issues like that. Power distribution, yeah, like power through the tunnels, yeah, old cables need to be replaced, that kind of thing. But actual availability of the power, that's a new one on me.
I thought there was another.
No, we've had multiple of those, right?
Yeah,
There's been substation issues before.
yeah. I kind of remember like something in the last year
Yeah.
or two. Yeah.
I thought,
Power,
I thought that was all
it ties to our,
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, please.
no, I was just gonna say it ties into our conversation on escalators, right? It's another piece of infrastructure that you have to maintain. We have an entire department that's devoted to power and structures and all that, and to the power infrastructure. And I thought I remember for a few years back that we had quite a few issues. I'm trying to remember what I can't remember off the top of my head what they were, but I feel
you're absolutely right. And but I believe the problems in the past that were related to power were all about distribution, like getting the power from the substation to the tracks, or problems like you said, substation. But this was like a supply issue, not a distribution issue, as far as I'm reading it. I'll do a little more digging. And then one last thing before we wrap it up. Just I guess it's more of an aside, and I don't have anything to put up, but you guys, you can call this a report on an external meeting. So last month we had Senator Crichton at this meeting 4 weeks ago or so, and at a community event I ran into Sean Reed, who was also joined us last month. Sean Reed's Senator Crichton's communications director. And Sean told me that Senator Crichton really enjoyed spending the time with us. So it's basically a thank you from the senator for having us ask him to join us last month. And Sean, again, the communications director for the senator, said that, yeah, it was basically time well spent, and we should continue to engage with the senator's office as needed.
That's good. Good. I'll try and get Sean Garberly, to join next time. I mean, I think Sean was interested in joining, but for some reason he didn't. I haven't followed up with him. I'll be following up with him again soon. That's good. So yeah.
And then one add on to that. At the same event, I also met State Representative for the first time. I met State Representative Jenny Armini, who's out of Swampscott. I don't remember exactly her district, but I'm sure it's centered around Swampscott in a way, or focused on North Shore. And it turns out that Jenny Armini filed the bill in the House. That's the complement to Brendan Crichton's bill in the Senate for the continuation of the electrification project from North Station to Lynn and perhaps Swampscott Salem. And I believe also the Fairmont line. So I talked with Representative Armini about that, and we actually have a couple of ideas that we're going to pursue with regard to getting some support behind that project.
Mhm.
And I also ran that idea that, again, it was Representative Armini's idea, but I went, after I was talking with her about it, I went right back over to Sean Reed and said, hey, has Senator Crichton thought about this particular angle for getting support behind the Senate version of the bill? And seemed like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So, I mean, this is not really rider oversight stuff, but I just wanted to mention it again under like external meeting stuff. Some interest, some tie-in from me personally to the electrification bills.
It's good. It's good. You know, well,
I'll leave it at that.
well, I think I'm slowly kind of understanding how things work in the state legislature. And so it's not clear to me, I mean, if you need to have bills in place with what you want, um, in order to get what you want ultimately, you know. So I mean, because a lot of times it seems to me that things like other bills get amended, you know, when they are really on their way towards becoming legislation. I mean, and it's not clear to me that that amendment is necessarily based on another bill that's already been filed. I mean, it seems to me that that amendment can kind of come out of the blue, you know. And so it's good to have these things there, because I guess you never know what's going to catch fire. But it seems like what catches fire is really based on what leadership wants to have happen, you know. And so it's only if leadership cares about these things that they're going to move. I mean, and so it'll be interesting to see if we can get leadership interested in them enough to make the move.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very well said.
All right. So, motion to adjourn.
Let me check for any public comments. We have nobody putting any chat into YouTube, and the only attendee is Craig on the phone. So yeah, I heard a second.
So I'll second it.
All right. This hearing is Craig. Take care.
Yep.
Everybody.
See you well, everyone, and thank you all.
See you in a couple weeks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night.